So, what is that song? First of all, it's a little clue about what we're doing next. It is a song called Blood Type by my new favorite band of the year, Kino. They're a band from Russia in the 80s. They're in Russian, so I don't really understand all that they're saying, but one of their most famous songs is called Blood Type, which I thought was fitting because today, as you see here, we are doing Lesson 3, Blood Type, and I can click on that, Blood Analysis. So you can go online and read along, and you can also have the booklet, which you can see down here. We're doing blood typing, and first of all, you're going to read the lesson, and you're going to take the quiz and submit. If you want, pause after every kind of section and do that section. The last one we probably went all at once, but this time you're getting the hang of things, and it's going to follow a pattern for the next lesson as well, and a couple others. So you should be comfortable. We're going to read something, we're going to take a quiz, we're going to do the labs, we're going to submit them, we're going to map them, and we're going to do a prediction. That's kind of the normal flow. So let's look down here. Read the lesson, take the quiz and submit, do the control lab, the evidence lab, submit the labs, map out all the blood you found on the crime scene map, and then make a prediction, and you are done. This is lesson M3, blood typing for murder at Old Fields. All right, so today I will kind of read through this, but you're going to have to read it. I'll give you the basics, and I'll give you some demos. I'll explain kind of how the lab works. I'll try and make it a little quicker than last time, but this is a cool one. And this is a lesson where we will actually do the in-person lab if you are present and able to do it, depending on how we're doing this course. So if we can, I will actually pull out some blood samples and synthetic blood. It will stain your clothing, but it is not a biohazard, just so you know. But we can do some sampling in class. You can also do the exact same thing with these blood and antibody tests on the digital version online. You can take droppers and test blood from all the suspects, and it will match up perfectly with what we're doing in the physical lab. But we'll also take our own blood, and I'm kidding. Although we have had teachers that have done that with a little finger prick and done actual antibody testing, but we won't be taking each other's blood samples just yet, let's say. That'd be kind of freaky. So what we will do, let's take a look down here. Let's look at the lab. Let's look at the laptop. All right. So you'll take the quiz. Most humans have 1 in 8 types of blood. I'm going to actually use the document. It's a little better for me here, right? These are the percentages of blood. Do you know your blood type? I am A negative, somewhat rare. Interesting side story. One day I was going to Thailand. I landed in Chiang Mai up in the mountains of Thailand. And as the plane touched down, my friend sent me a message and said, "Are you blood type A negative?" Because we all had to get our blood test taken. We were living in a foreign country. And part of getting a residency was getting a blood type. So I was A negative, and she thought she knew that. So she said, "Are you A negative? If so, go to the hospital in Chiang Mai City right now. There's a tourist who got in a scooter accident. She smashed her head open. She's dying. She's losing blood. She needs all of the negative blood she can get." And interestingly enough, in most Asian parts of the world, negative blood isn't that common. It's very rare. So all the Westerners that were traveling in Asia lined up at this hospital and all gave blood. And the hospital had a long supply of negative blood, which was very hard for them to get. But I got bumped to the front of the line because I had ID that proved I had negative blood, and I was able to donate this blood to this girl. She barely made it. She did survive. It was actually international news because she had a severe head injury, almost died, was on life support for a while, and she made it through, and she's living a life now. But it was cool because I was able to help, and our bags didn't even make it to the hotel. That's how quick the whole thing was. From the time we got to off the plane, gave the blood, came back, we were still waiting for our bags, so barely took up any of my time, and it helped save a life. So that was a kind of random story, but, you know, blood type. So let's look down here. Those are the blood types. I am A negative, I said that. You might know yours, you might not. An individual's blood type can be used as an identifier in a laboratory. If your blood is O positive and the blood in the scene is O negative, it's not your blood. A person's blood type is determined by the presence or absence of inherited substance on the surface of blood cells called blood antigens. So like if you got a blood cell, it's things on the surface that'll make it A or B or O and positive or negative or AB. It's these things on the surface called antigens. All right? So that's what's going to determine that. And we got different things to test what these surfaces are. These include type A, B, and RH, which is positive or negative, right? There are 8 possible combinations of these blood groups right there. People usually have antibodies in the blood plasma against the red cell antigens that they lack. For example, type A blood contains anti-B antibodies. What are antibodies? Antibodies are proteins that are used by our immune system to identify things that are foreign and harmful. So we all have antigens on our cells that our immune system is used to, and if we have anything else that's different than that, our immune system will attack it, right? And we could actually use this kind of to our advantage to test blood types, and I'll explain that right away. You're going to want to read through this slowly before you take the quiz, because this quiz is a little bit harder. It's a little bit tricky, and it's one of those things that once you do the lab, then it makes sense. But when you're first reading it, be very careful. So, antibodies are proteins used by our immune system. How can blood type be determined? Blood type can be determined through the use of serums, which simulate antibodies. Because each type of antibody binds tightly to only one antigen, antibodies are useful for identifying blood type. I'll clarify that. Antibodies will bind to the corresponding antigens on the red blood cells. Okay, let's just wait here. Let's just wait. If this sounds kind of crazy to you right now, that's okay. The binding of these antibodies in the serum will cause clumping, and this is the key. Clumping is very important, or clouding in the mixture. You can see this reaction. Now, when you see clumping, you know you've got something, and I'll explain that right away. So when you add things to the different blood types, it'll either clump or not clump, and that's how you're going to make identifications about what blood type it is. Because antigen, reacting, that's a little confusing right now, but when you do the lab, you will understand. Let's see. So if you add anti-A serum to the blood of a sample gathered from the crime scene and it clumps, you have determined that it is A. So if you have a sample of blood and you add antigen A serum and it makes it cloudy, you know that's A blood. All right, that's starting to make a little sense. So if you had blood and you added antigen A and it didn't do anything, you know that it's either O type or B type, but not A, because the A serum didn't mix with anything. It didn't clump. All right? This will get clear right away. Don't panic. How do you determine if it's positive or negative? Well, you use an RH, a rhesus factor antigen. So just like you're testing for A or B or O if nothing reacts, you also test for positive or negative. So you kind of got to look at it this way. You're going to test if it's A or if it's B. If it reacts to this, it's an A. If it reacts to the B, it's a B. If it doesn't react to either, it's O. And then you also test if it's positive or negative. And if you dip the RH factor in and it does react, you know it's positive blood. And if nothing clumps, you know it's negative blood. Don't worry, we got time to explain it, and the demos will help. You can read along here, but I'm going to just actually, you can look at these. I believe this is on the online version right here, and this will give you more explanation. Please read that before you kind of move on to the next section. Kind of get comfortable with it, and now if you need to pause for a second, that's okay. No problem. Now, let's do an example here. So I'm going to kind of jump ahead. So you should read and take the quiz. This will be one of the harder quizzes. Don't get discouraged. Now we're going to kind of look at how the labs would work, okay? So you're going to do control lab. Control is the one we know. We took blood samples from every person from the crime scene, and now we're going to test to see what they are, and then we're going to look for things we don't know whose blood it is and see if we can match them, right? And then you'll submit the lab. So let's take a look at this. What you will get, here we go. I'll put this there. So we actually have a bag of blood. And every one is labeled like suspect 3, or evidence H from the front room, or suspect 2, or evidence G from the window. It tells you where every blood is from. Just like it would if you look here. If you go up when you're ready to do the lab section, you would obviously go to lab. You would select the blood type lab. You would start with the control side. You would start with this side and do all of these people here. Alexander Smith's blood. And all you do is you take a dabber, and I've already done it. So you would take the dabber and it would show up here, and you would actually drop. You click on here, click, and it'll tell you if it reacts to antigen A. If nothing reacted, it's not A. I clicked here, it didn't cloud, so it's not B, which means it must be O. And it didn't cloud here, which means it's not positive either. So it's not A or B, it's O, because nothing clouded here. And it didn't cloud on the positive test, so it has to be O negative. Let's look at another person's blood type here for a second. Look at hers. Or Henry Bowers, it clumped on A, it clumped on B, and it clumped... Oh wait, sorry. Dropped it. Oh, it did clump. Okay. And then I drop again. Oh, okay, nothing on B. So we know he's going to be A. He's not B. And did it test for... Oh, it did. So he's positive. So he would be A positive. Look, I could go here. It reacted. The B did not react. And the RH reacted. So he has to be A positive. So you would do that for each person. You would just click on their name. Click on their blood type. No reaction. No reaction. So they must be type O. And, oh, they didn't react for that. So they are O negative. That's a pretty rare blood type. So that's what you need to do. But you could also do this in this right here. You could do this in the real world. So what does that mean? Look at, well, I'll show you. One of the things that they tell you to do in the lab, now when we do this, we are, like I said, if we have time and you're around, if we're able to, we're going to actually do the blood drops and test them as a class. They say to use a wax pencil on it to write, but I prefer doing it like this, here where I put the name and then I did the test. So you got these blood trays and you kind of write on a Post-it note who the person is or where it's from, and then you identify it. I find that using a wax pencil isn't that great. It's hard to read, but putting a Post-it on it was very good. So let me show you what we mean here. So yes, I've shown you how the online version works and how you would run through everything and determine it. But let's do a couple here in the real world. So what you would do, you take an empty tray. There you go. And it says A, B, RH. So we have 3 antigen testers. We have the A serum, the B serum, and the RH serum. So we're going to use those 3. Now let's take our first person here. I will take suspect 1. You read there. Suspect 1. That's Henry Bauer, I believe. Yes, Henry Bauer is suspect 1. So we will take 1 drop of his blood, and we will put it here. A drop in the A test, a drop in the B test, and a drop in the RH test for positive or negative. Now look at this. I can take the A test serum, and I will put a drop on his blood. I will take the B test serum. I will put a drop of that in the B tray. And I will take the RH test serum and see if it's positive or negative. Now, I let those sit for a second, and I can use a stick to stir them. Never use the same side. If you use that side, you need to either break the stick to mix the next one, or use the other end. Okay, now I've got some interesting findings here. Look at this. The A has become cloudy, and the positive has become cloudy, but the B has stayed the same. The B hasn't become cloudy. So we know that suspect 1, Henry Bauer, is A positive. Ta-da! Let's take another one here. Let's look at victim 1. It says here, victim 1, Mr. Smith here. So we'll take a new tray. I'll put 3 drops in. The A blood, the B, and the positive test. Just a drop each. And then obviously I will test to see if it is A. Okay. I will test to see if it is B. And I will test to see if there's an RH reaction, if there's any cloudy or clumping. You could swirl them. I prefer to stir them. Use different side each time you stir. This is pretty wild because, look at that. It didn't react to A, it didn't react to B, and it didn't react to the positive test, which means victim 1 didn't react to any of them, so he must be O and negative. Didn't react, didn't react, didn't react, O negative. Would you like to see one more? Here we go. Victim 2, that is Rebecca Smith, the wife. She died. So we're going to look at Rebecca's blood. We'll take a tray here. We will go a drop for A, B, and positive or negative. We will test that out. Let's take an A test. Does she react on the A? Okay, let's see if that gets cloudy. Does it react on the B? Let's see if that gets cloudy. And does it react on the positive test for the RH factor? Let's see. I will take a stick. I will stir. I will stir. Ooh, that's getting cloudy. That's a little different. And this one, no reaction. So it is not A, but it did react here, so it is B. It's a little cloudy. Might be hard to see. There you can see a difference. And it didn't react here, so it's not positive. It is B, not positive, means that victim 2, Rebecca Smith, is B negative blood. Now, for your purposes, you will do the online version of this. You will go through the online lab and you will test every person on the control side here, right? You will go through every one of these people. Right here, you'll do all of them and determine their blood type. But please write it down. Let me move that in the lab. Say if they reacted, and then tell what blood type it is, because you need to know what every one of these person's blood type is. Okay, so that is the control section of the lab. Table 1, right? Now, why is that important to get the control samples right? Because now what you're going to do is you're going to look around the crime scene and you're going to gather all the blood and test it. And you will start to see who could be a match. Now, obviously, there's a lot of samples and there's a lot of people that we've tested the blood from. So there might be some people with the same blood type. So there's possibilities about whose blood it could be. But you will take on here, if you look here, you go to the evidence side and you go through all of those and you test them. You test every single piece of evidence. All right, so that's the next thing you do. You do, flip ahead here, you do the evidence table. Evidence A, B, G, H, 1, H2, J, K, and L, and you say what blood types they are in the end. Say if they clumped or not for these and determine the blood type. Now, what do you think you have to do at the end? You have to see the blood types around the rooms and connect them to the people we know. So you have to say, this blood found in this part of the room could either belong to these two people or this person. And you'll decide whose blood is found where. So that is the next step here. Next step, control lab, evidence lab. After you've read and taken the quiz, you do your 2 labs, submit your lab, and then map it out. And how can you do that? Well, this is really nice. The doc down here, you can say exhibit pool A. Well, if it matches, it could be this person maybe and that person. This one only could be that person. These are examples. I'm just pretending. But you have to compare. You have to compare the controls to the evidence and decide whose it could be. Right? And once you've decided whose blood it could be, the last thing you need to do is map it out, which means you go back to the crime scene and you go through all of the blood samples that have been found, and you go through all of them and say whose blood it is. That's your second last part here, because now you will see who's had hair potentially found in different rooms and in different areas around the house, and whose blood potentially, because there could be more than one person, because blood type isn't like a DNA test, it's only narrowing things down a bit, just like hair samples, just narrow things down a bit. But now you're starting to see potential blood and hair samples in rooms where maybe they shouldn't be. Next, we'll be looking at fingerprints, and with blood, hair, and fingerprint evidence mapped out around the house, why is that person's blood here? Why is that person's hair here? Why are there fingerprints there? Why is this blood here? Now, some blood might make sense, like the axe probably has the victim's blood on it, right? But I don't think that they smashed themselves with an axe, right? I don't think it was suicide or something like that. Although maybe. But that's what you need to do. So let's just look here. Read through the lesson, take the quiz, do the control lab, do the evidence lab. Now please do the paperwork as well. Do those checklists and say whose blood is where, and then map out the lab research and say whose blood could be in what rooms. And then the last thing I want you to do is make a prediction. So what I want you to do now is, using what you've gathered from this activity, you now have hair and you have blood. Has what you found in this lab narrowed down who you think might be guilty? Has it changed your previous prediction? Do you think you know who did it? Because next we're doing fingerprints, and if you're really on the ball, after these three, you pretty much know who did it if you're good at doing your job here. And then the further labs are just kind of fun. They're a little quirky. Some of them are good, some of them aren't that great, but they will help you narrow down and almost confirm what these first three labs we're working on are telling you. So I hope you're enjoying this. There's quite a bit to do, but work your way through the controls and the evidence and the quiz. Fill out all the charts in the booklet if you can, and submit everything and map it out and make a prediction. We're almost ready to see who the murderer is most likely to be. So I will put on a little bit of kino. And with that, I will say goodbye, crime solvers.